Hey, everybody. My name is Brendon Booth from DynastyProsFootball.com. With me today is Mike Lindberg from DynastyProsFootball.com. Today, we're going to do Dynasty Dilemmas. We are talking about different players. This is a recurring series that all of us writers do on the DynastyProsFootball.com website. What we do is we take a player, we look at their pros, their cons, figure out what to do with them if you're in a Dynasty league. So today, we're going to be looking at George Pickens and Van Jefferson. So today I'm going to argue for both of them, and Mike's going to argue against both of them, which shouldn't be that hard.
Should be a fun time.
Yeah. So before we get into that, Mike, where can everybody find you?
Well, you can find me on X or Twitter, if you will, at FFCanuck99. You can find all my written content on Dynasty Pros. You can find us all over the place on Twitter, and check us out. We've got a lot of content hitting the airways right now, online and stuff like that. You can find a lot of great stuff there for Devi, Dynasty, and IDP. We're rocking out lots of content right now.
Absolutely. And you can find me at BigBonedFFB on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. At BigBonedFFB on YouTube. And there's a link in my Twitter account to my Substack. Go ahead and read some of my private stuff. And I write for playerprofiler.com. So that's a little bit about us. If you want to get into the Dynasty Pros content, it's dynastyprosfootball.com, or you can find it on Twitter at Dynasty Pros. And there should be promotion of all the articles that we do and the podcasts and everything. So go ahead and check those out. Subscribe on every different platform that you can, because there's a ton of good information coming out, especially if you're into Devi and definitely if you're into Dynasty. That's kind of like what we're all best at is Dynasty. All right, so we have a recurring series in which we take a player. Today it's going to be the first one is going to be George Pickens, and George Pickens came out of Georgia. He was a highly touted NFL prospect. He was drafted in the second round by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had a physical profile of 6'3" and 200 pounds. So that's pretty much ideal size for a wide receiver. He had a 4.47 40-yard dash, which is still under the 4.5, which is kind of the threshold that you want to meet. He had a 79th percentile speed score, and he had a 49th percentile burst score, and that was after ACL surgery, which caused him to miss most of his senior season at Georgia. I'm looking at a rookie breakout, 801 yards on 52 receptions from 85 targets. That's in a Kenyatta offense that isn't a high volume passing offense, and he's competing with Deontay Johnson, who's 140 plus target hog. He had 1,323 total air yards, 15.4 yards per reception, and 4 total touchdowns, 9.8 fantasy points per game. Now, this is as a rookie. So he's coming out as a rookie, coming off of an injury to his ACL. So he's not 100% in what he's doing. Plus, like I said, he has the limited route tree. His floor was essentially 10 points per game. He only had 4 receiving touchdowns. Now, this is a passing offense where Kenny Pickett threw 7 touchdowns to Pat Freiermuth, 4 touchdowns to George Pickens, and 0 touchdowns to Deontay Johnson. How Deontay Johnson had 140 targets and 0 touchdowns is astronomically ridiculous. But the point is, they're going into the season looking to throw the ball more. Kenny Pickett has developed as a rookie quarterback. He's going into his second year. Pickens, his route tree is expanding. He only can look at, with a healthy year, positive touchdown regression, adding on to those 4 touchdowns. He should have more than 52 receptions and more than 801 receiving yards. One of the things to look at with Pickens is his ADOT last year was 14.7. He of people with more than 50 targets, I think he was in the top 3 or top 4. So top three. So those are fantastic numbers. His route tree is expanding. he is one of the most athletic, acrobatic pass catchers that you'll see. He did some things in training camp this year that were mind-numbing, going up and over cornerbacks, snatching balls out of the air with one hand, things like that. This is like Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr., those kinds of catches. George Pickens is the guy that is making those kinds of catches. So I'm all in on George Pickens for a second-year breakout.
I agree with a lot of those points. His stature, 6'3", 220, like you'd mentioned, he's the typical X receiver. Old school scouts love George Pickens because of the tape. I'm more of an analytics guy, so I'm going to be siding on what I see, what I've uncovered in his game. Second round draft capital. He was a first round talent, like you had mentioned, slid into the second round because of his ACL potentially, but I also heard he had some attitude issues as well, which could be a red flag for some of the teams, and that's probably why he slid into the second round. Historically, second round wide receivers, they don't do well hitting in the top 24 wide receivers if they haven't done so in their first year. So that's a 25% mark. George Pickens, his best indicator for success is what? Targets. And who monopolizes the targets in Pittsburgh? Well, Deontay Johnson. He had 140 plus targets 3 seasons in a row. So my biggest qualm here with George Pickens isn't his talent. It's where he's going right now in startup drafts. We did a startup draft last 2 weeks ago with the Dynasty Pros staff, and George Pickens was the 24th wide receiver off the board. And he is rising at a really fast rate. Nothing to me has shown that he can put up top 24 numbers at this stage of his career. He finished as the wide receiver 42 last year, so we're actually having to, bump him up, 2 full rounds. So that's a huge investment to be making on someone that hasn't proven himself yet. Pickens hasn't done a really good job of earning targets. 15.6% target share. When we compare him to the other rookies in this class, like London, Olave, Wilson, Burks, and Dotson, those are all numbers that those are all players that had a better target share in their rookie season. 12 games last year, Pickens had 3 or less catches. So that's 12 games out of 17 where he was not being looked at. So he's clearly not being their first look or even their second look when in situations. So his 1.38 yards per route run is well below the 1.48 standard that second-year wide receivers should be hitting. 14% of his targets per route run with a 94% route participation means clearly he isn't being targeted when he should be. He hasn't shown that he's been a good separator either, especially in those short and intermediate routes. If you follow Matt Harmon and Percept and Reception, some great information there I found on his website. 64.9% success rate versus man. So that's a 34th percentile. Not a great number. The biggest one here for me is his success rate versus zone coverage, which is a 68.3%. That is the 5th percentile. That is well within the bottom range of the league, if not some of the worst receivers out there. When we compare those X receivers to similar profiling guys, you're looking at Kelvin Benjamin and Corey Davis with very similar zone success rates. So not comparing them to very, successful wide receivers. High percentage of NFL routes are slants, cuts, and digs, and he had a very low success rate against them as well. So where does he excel? Well, he excels in contested catches. Great for the highlight reel catches. You can see him on SportsCenter all the time. But for me, that's a red flag when 1/3 of his catches are deep routes. Okay. And he hasn't shown that he could score a lot of touchdowns. Okay. So his 4 touchdowns and his success rate versus contested catches, he's not converting a lot of touchdowns, meaning that he doesn't have a whole lot of yards after the catch. So his yak is not very good. 94th rated in yards after the catch. So he's making those big plays, but he's not doing anything with the ball afterwards. What else is there? Well, he has a lot of things that are going to need to go his way in order for him to become a top 24 wide receiver. A huge leap from Kenny Pickett. Okay. And I foresee that happening, but I can't see him being a top 12 quarterback in this league. The draft capital doesn't suggest that. His first year doesn't suggest that. And also Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator does not suggest that. In order to be able to sustain 2 top 24 wide receivers, because Pickens is being drafted as so in Dynasty, and in my opinion, Deontay Johnson is already that. Okay, so 96% chance of being a top 24 wide receiver if you receive 140 targets or more, and Deontay Johnson's done that 3 seasons in a row. So I can't knock Deontay Johnson down any, because he hasn't shown me anything other than the lack of touchdown production that will put Pickens above him. And in order for Pickens to be a top 24 wide receiver, he has to overtake Deontay Johnson, and I can't see that happening this year. And if he doesn't do a good job this year, they may extend Deontay Johnson further as well. So, you know, a lot of variables happening there. Matt Canada, I haven't gotten too much into there, but this is his 3rd season as the offensive coordinator, and I'm going to run a couple numbers down here for you. In 2020, the Steelers threw the ball 656 times and ran the ball 373. So that's a 36% variance. Okay, so 64% pass heavy to run. In 2024, that number was very similar, 664 to 411 rushing. But then the pattern is really starting to come down a bit now. Now they're moving towards, it looks like, a more run-heavy offense in 2022, 53% passing to 47% rushing. So they did 571 pass attempts and 500 rushing attempts. And I know that has a lot to do with acclimating your rookie quarterback. And I could see the Steelers still passing a bit more this year, maybe pushing the 600 attempt, but that doesn't leave a whole lot of extra catches for Pickens to gobble up, especially if he isn't creating that separation. I'm very optimistic about the outlook of Pickens, hearing things out of camp that he's running a more diverse route tree, getting some more looks in the intermediate routes. But there's also that opportunity that potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they brought in Allen Robinson to be the big slot wide receiver. Not saying he's going to take anything away from Pickens, but in 11 personnel, I've seen in preseason that he's been taken off the field a little bit more frequently, which wasn't happening last year. So Pickens isn't, on the field, his 94% route participation. I find it going to be hard for him to increase that target share, increase his touchdown regression. So yeah, those are my big red flags on George Pickens. I love him. I love the talent, but I just think he's going really, really high in drafts right now compared to some of the other guys that I saw go in around the same area. We're talking about guys like Treylon Burks, Zay Flowers, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnson. All of these guys are first round draft capital, and some of them are already proven. So I'm going to take, the first round draft capital or a proven guy over a George Pickens who may or may not hit those lofty expectations that we're expecting from him.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. One of the things that you cited was our writer's startup draft where he went as the wide receiver 24. That was absolutely a reach. I'm looking at the draft results right now, and he went ahead of Amari Cooper, Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, Zay Flowers. There isn't one of those players that I would take Pickens over.
Exactly.
Now, I will say, Peter Howard at PA Howdy did an analysis on possible breakouts, and he found that if you're talking about year 1 to year 2 wide receivers, one of the best indicators is total yards. And guys that break into the top 24, there's a threshold of 600 yards as at their rookie season that they have to exceed. So if we're looking at somebody with specific draft capital, and then what are their chances based on the draft capital of them getting into the top 24, that's a marker. But then you have their whole rookie season to look at, and draft capital kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. He did have 800 yards receiving, and ADOT is yards per reception is a very big indicator of how somebody's going to do in the future in the NFL. And those numbers point to Pickens at least being a top 36 wide receiver. Now,
I can agree with that.
On Fantasy Pros at this point, he is the 34th wide receiver, 81st overall. He's still being drafted ahead of Jahan Dotson, which I don't agree with.
No, me neither.
And some of the guys behind him, this seems like it would be the proper range. So he's got Jahan Dotson behind him, which I don't agree with. Then after that, you get Marquise Brown, Jordan Addison, Brandon Cooks, JSN, Cortland Sutton, Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Thomas, and Gabe Davis. Now, all things considered, in a dynasty startup draft, I'm likely going to go with Addison or JSN before I go with Pickens. But for him to be within 4 or 5, within the same round as those guys, having an 800-yard year under his belt is not out of the question. I absolutely would draft him before I took Cooks or Sutton or Michael Thomas or Gabe Davis or Marquise Brown. So on Fantasy Pros, he seems to be going in the right area. I am holding him. I'm not going to trade him. There aren't very many trade scenarios in which I would give him up, just because I see the potential that he could have as a breakout wide receiver superstar. That doesn't mean he's going to get into the top 24, top 12 necessarily this season, but over the next 3 to 5 years, I see him being in that elite level of production. The only thing is if somebody's offering me a first in 2024 or an early second in 2024, I might move off of Pickens then, but not for anything else.
I don't value him quite so high there. I don't see him like I saw last week that Football Guys has him in their dynasty rankings as wide receiver 24. That's aggressive for me when I look at the people that are being drafted around him in that range. I like what you said, right around wide receiver 34, top, wide receiver 3 on my lineup. I love that. I love to be able to go with the big play and cash in every once in a while on that. But every day of the bank, I'm taking Jahan Dotson over George Pickens every single time. And that's where he's going around. And to me, that's just, I'd rather go with somebody that is going to get those targets, earn those targets, not having to rely solely on the contested catch. And hopefully George Pickens' game will round off and he could be that superstar in the middle that everybody is hoping to see from him.
The other thing to consider is that I want to say that this is Deontay Johnson's last season on that contract. If it's not 2023, it's 2024. So within the next 3 years, as long as the Steelers let Deontay walk, George Pickens is the number 1 guy in Pittsburgh. So if you have him as a dynasty asset at the moment, be patient with him for the next couple of years. Hopefully he is your wide receiver 3 or your first flex wide receiver or even better than that. And he's going to produce for you. If he had what is considered to be a marginal or a mediocre season last year and he was still getting you 10 points per game, that's not terrible. I mean, it's not superstar ready, but you don't want anybody scoring less than 10 points per game. So I think we can be in agreement on George Pickens. We like him, but at the right price.
At the right price, just like anything. This is like the stock market. We have to look at these guys as, money values. And, I'm not going to overpay for somebody that I think that has a lot of variables in his game that need to come to fruition before I pay that kind of draft capital to secure him.
So I think what we can both say is that at this point, he hasn't reached his apex in value to be able to sell him.
Exactly.
So now would be a good time to go buy him before he has a
Well,
much better year.
yeah. Well, I'm not paying a top 24 pick in Dynasty for George Pickens.
No.
Like if 36, maybe, yeah, give me around there. Okay, I'm buying him there. But
No.
anything above that range is just. But he's going. Like some people are picking him in the top 12 as a wide receiver, and I can't justify that.
Yeah, and if you can get somebody in your dynasty league to give him to you for a 2024 third rounder, do that, because there are so many wide receivers in the first and second round next year. It's ridiculous. So
it is. It absolutely is. And I'm willing to make that. I'm willing to gamble on that. And you know what? Play the odds, because that's how I am. I'm more of an analytical kind of guy. I'm not. I think tape is super important, but I'm more of the. I see numbers. That's how I operate. So when I see, just based off of history and stuff like that, of these types of wide receivers, second round actually come into fruition, I'm gonna take the odds on that.
Yeah, one of the things is you watch him make Odell Beckham Jr. style catches, but he doesn't have the volume that Odell had when Odell was doing that on a regular basis. And it would be really nice to see those two things come together. Have him get the 140 targets per year with the ability to make those sideline toe tappers and the one-handed grabs where he's, contorting his body in midair. They're so fun to watch. The one that he had against Joey Porter Jr. in minicamp or in training camp, where he just absolutely mossed a stud rookie cornerback who's learning the game, but still, he just made him look foolish. And those things are so fun to watch.
But I think that's where us as dynasty managers can capitalize on that. We capitalize on those big plays where you're going to see somebody overvalue George Pickens and think that he's that top 12 guy because of those contested catches. And you may be able to turn him into a first round pick next year. And that's kind of where I see it. I see an opportunity where there's such a broad range of where he's going in drafts that I think you could capitalize either buying, selling, or holding him. Because depending on the person on the other side of the trade market, you could be really cashing in big time, depending on how you view him and how he views him, or the other person does. So,
yeah. Okay. Now,
Van Jefferson.
The next guy that we're going to talk about is Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson of the Los Angeles Rams. Jefferson is 6'1", 200 pounds. He was drafted in the second round, so another guy with second round draft capital. He was drafted out of the 2020 draft, and one of the things that we look at when we're looking at draft profiles is who are the guys that he's being drafted amongst from his college team when he had his college breakout. And that University of Florida team that he was drafted from had Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts, Freddie Swain, who's an NFL wide receiver, and LaMichael Pirine, who somehow just got a job in Kansas City. He was competing for targets. So he was in a stacked receiving core. He came into the league with an NFL pedigree. His father is Sean Jefferson. Jefferson was a 13-year NFL veteran. He's currently the wide receivers coach for the Carolina Panthers. So that is a lineage that everybody wants to have. One of the reasons that Jefferson is such a steal right now is that 2022 was a lost season for him. He was a 2020 rookie. He had a fairly good rookie season, and then he really broke out in 2021. Jefferson was the Rams' fourth receiving option in 2021. They obviously had Cooper Kupp. They had Tyler Higbee with more targets than Van. And then they had Robert Woods until he got injured, and they brought in Odell Beckham Jr. That team went to the Super Bowl and won. He had 50 catches for over 800 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is essentially the year that George Pickens just had that last year. But he excelled as a deep target. On vertical routes, he had a 63.8% success rate, 81.5% success rate on deep posts, and 69.6% success rate on deep corner routes. And he was third in the NFL in ADOT. So the Rams were ranked 10th in passing volume. He had a 23.6% air yard share, which is pretty great. And he finished the season as PPR wide receiver 36. Now, here's where it gets great. Okay. That year was a full season for him, and he finished as wide receiver 36. This year, he's being taken on Fantasy Pros as wide receiver 79, overall 237. So we're talking undrafted in 12-team redraft leagues. We're talking being drafted as the 6th wide receiver option. Now, here's what it's going to take. Matt Stafford hurt last year. He's healthy. Van Jefferson hurt last year. He's healthy. Cooper Kupp banged up right now. Van Jefferson was going into the season as the number 2 wide receiver on the LA Rams. Right now, until Cooper Kupp makes it back, Van Jefferson is the primary receiving option. They're not going to have Cooper Kupp taking all that target share. Van Jefferson is going to absolutely feast. And again, in his breakout season, he was wide receiver 36. This year, he's going as wide receiver 79. So if you want to take him in a startup draft at the wide receiver 40, you're not going to be giving up much value. If you want to take him as the wide receiver 50, he's going to be there, and you can reach for that. 60, 75. Van Jefferson is absolutely going to blow away those 43 points or 43 ADP slots that he's falling in drafts. I love him. I've been drafting the crap out of him on as many teams as I can for the last 2.5 months. And it wasn't until the other day when Cooper Kupp's hamstring started bothering him again that I started having Van Jefferson go in front of me in drafts. And we're talking 13th round, 14th round, where I'd been getting him for 2 months. Now he's going in the 12th or the 11th round. So right now is the time to be drafting him, but he's still going to absolutely outplay that ADP.
100%. He will. He'll smash that ADP in redraft this year. I'm concerned more of like buying into, Van Jefferson long term. He's on a contract year right now. I think he's 27 years old. He sustained a pretty severe knee injury a couple of years ago where he had 2 surgeries leading up to 2022. So is he really fully healthy? Do we know? Can we actually trust the Rams training staff? You know how they, I'm sure I'll bring back the Todd Gurley situation with his knee, or even last year, Matthew Stafford with his elbow. We don't know. Van Jefferson also missed 2 practices to start camp. So they were Veterans Days, but I don't know. Does he have any lingering issues? When we look at last year in the final 8 games of the season when Van Jefferson was healthy, or supposedly healthy, he had a 16.8% target share, which is actually better than his target share, 14.8, when he had that really good breakout season in 2021. Kupp missed all those games as well. So let's dive into what the Rams offense looked like in those 8 games. They averaged 141 passing yards and 0.07 touchdowns. I know Matthew Stafford is back, but he's 35 years old. He's got a bad back. He's had a couple concussions last year and his elbow. So Van Jefferson being that deep target that we're talking about, can Matthew Stafford even get him the ball down that far at this stage of his career? I don't know. Matthew Stafford is dealing with those injuries as well, like I just mentioned. So is he going to be there? So if he takes a bad hit early and could be sidelined, what's stopping the Rams from tanking and going after Caleb Williams? Well, I guess they can't because of the draft capital, but similar, like they could be tanking for some draft capital down the line. And that's where, Van Jefferson can be, just displaced if he doesn't put up good numbers earlier on in the season. I do like what the Rams have in their slate. I know they have that 5th round draft pick, Puka Nacua, who looks like the young Robert Woods with the way he could be utilized out of the backfield in the slot role. He's a 5th round pick, so I mean I'm not putting a whole lot of value in that, but he's also going around the same area as Jefferson is in dynasty startups. So to me, I'm more of like I'll go with the youngster there, especially in that role where he's going to be your wide receiver 4 or 5 leading in there. If he's not going to be starting, I'd rather go with that youth. But not a whole lot to battle there. If Jefferson can keep his knee healthy, and the Rams can have Stafford on the field, like he will definitely deliver on his ADP, like you had mentioned, and really smash. But there's a couple variables there that we need to take into consideration. But I'm just like you. I've got him everywhere I can. You sniped me in our Dynasty Pros draft on getting him. So, he is rising up the draft board. So, don't overpay for him. If he goes into the 10th, 9th round, which he may now at this stage, I'd be a little bit more concerned about that. But where he's sitting right now and where he is, it's definitely worth the gamble on that one, because what can you lose, right? 14th round pick, not super valuable at this stage. We're just throwing darts at the wall at that stage anyway. So, yeah, good analysis on that, Brandon. And I think Van will have a big year.
Yeah, and if you find yourself in a draft and you've already taken 5 wide receivers, go ahead and grab Van Jefferson and don't feel like you're reaching at all.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to push back on Puka a little bit. I do like Nakua, but as far as I remember, he had just as much injury history in college as Van Jefferson has had since he started college.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look for Van Jefferson's draft capital, his size, his physical profile, and all of those, his heritage, lineage, legacy, the fact that he's done it before. I would look at all those things. He's primed for not his 3rd-year breakout because he got hurt, but what should have been his 3rd-year breakout is going to come this year. So if he's there, grab him. And in my dynasty leagues that I didn't draft him in the startups, I've been taking him off the waiver wire because he's on the waiver wire. So wherever he is, go out and grab him. And if you have somebody in your league that happens to have him, throw him a 4th rounder, throw him a 3rd rounder in 2025, whatever. Go get Van Jefferson because he is so undervalued right now that it's pretty crazy. So
it is. There's so much value there, and you could really make big off of it. That 4th rounder you give up, somebody might be willing to pay a 3rd rounder next year for him. And we know with next year's draft class what it is. We could find a gem in that 3rd round where, not often where the 3rd round of a draft, you're going to be able to find somebody that can stick out. But in 2024, all signs are pointing that way. So hold on to those draft picks if you have them. Don't be selling them for nothing.
Yeah, and if you want to know who those 2024 wide receivers are, go to dynastyprosfootball.com. I've already written about 4 of them, Egbuka and Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. They didn't really have huge days yesterday, but McMillan and Adunze, who for Washington, who were absolutely spectacular yesterday. McMillan had, I think, 95 yards receiving and 20 yards rushing, and he had 2 touchdowns, 1 of each. So he and Adunze are going to absolutely feast this year. And then that's not even considering some of the other guys that are coming out. This wide receiver draft class is so stacked that if you're not tanking in your dynasty league right now, or at least collecting all of the 2024 early picks that you possibly can, you're falling behind already, and you're doing it wrong. This is the draft class to absolutely get as many 1st and 2nd round picks as you possibly can, because there are so many studs coming out next year at every position: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. They're just like, there are so many guys. They're going to completely restructure all dynasty leagues for a long time. Your guys that have been traditionally in the bottom rungs of your dynasty league over the last few years, all of the early picks that they have next year, they're going to start winning championships with those guys. So go get them now. Trade them your veterans now, and go get those picks.
I could see 3 of those wide receivers, without even stepping foot on an NFL field, be ranked in the top 24 dynasty wide receivers without even stepping on the field next year. So that's how deep this class is. If not 4, you mentioned McMillan and Adunze, both those guys could potentially sneak in there. We know that Mbuka is going to be there. We know that Marvin Harrison Jr., like him, right off the bat. He's going to be wide receiver 3 in most platforms without even stepping on the field.
And there was no 2022 or 2023 quarterback that is as good as Caleb Williams or Drake May. There's been no tight end the last couple of years that's as good as Brock Bowers is going to be coming out in 24. At the running back position, you have Raheem Sanders from Arkansas, Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, and other guys and other guys and other guys. It's just like they're so stacked next year. I'm excited.
Let's just hope that our Caleb Williams doesn't go to a place like Arizona there and ruin it for everybody in the whole fantasy football community. That would be one of the worst landing spots I could ever imagine him going. Hopefully
at Big Boned FFB on Twitter, there is a petition there on change.org or whatever that you can sign to keep Caleb Williams out of Arizona. So go to my Twitter page and find that petition.
I know JT Brew in the stew, he's all on that too. He does not want to see Caleb Williams go there either. So I think all Dynasty Pro guys are kind of on the same boat where we'd love to see him anywhere else but those Arizona.
We all want him in Vegas.
Yeah, okay, Let's there you go. Yeah, I wouldn't mind going to the Bucks either. That would be excellent. That'd be fun.
Yeah, the Buccaneers need him.
Yeah.
They need him bad.
Yeah.
Our Dynasty Dilemmas are now going to be on the YouTube channel, promoted across all platforms. So follow the channel, subscribe, like, comment, share. Go get the guys that we talk about or go trade away the guys that we talk about. Go to dynastyprosfootball.com. Follow me on Twitter at BigBonedFFB.
Follow Mike Lindberg at FFCanuck99 on Twitter, and find all our content on dynastypros.com, where you're going to see some really good stuff.